Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot to both of you. Okay, now my task is not easy, and especially at this time of the day. I was asked to do the discussion in French, but I had prepared in English, so I'm sorry. It's going to be even more difficult. So let me, maybe my first, so I'm an economist and I'm supposed to discuss as an economist. So let me offer a few reflections. Let me start with the second presentation by Seth. I think first the whole stories and the analysis of fruit farm workers, many of whom are undocumented migrants, is very interesting. There's of course a huge economic analysis also of migrations, and not purely economic, and there are many motives that may generate a migration process, but you focus on a population for which the main motive was economic. So now I'm in my field. And the main reason why this migration occurred is because of the differences in conditions between the origin and the destination country. So migrations are a result of inequality between countries. That's an obvious fact. Now, the current policy, you mentioned we are at a historical moment. This may also be for researchers somehow, maybe a little bit cynical, but an opportunity for research, because there's so many things are changing. Let me take an example. I have economist colleagues who intend to use the changes in tariff policies by Trump as an instrument to analyze the impact of tariffs on trade, innovation, investment, etc. So the current policy seems to me to be a change in the different dimensions of domination that dominate the others. Let me be more clear. The migration occurs as long as xenophobia is not is dominated by economic considerations, pragmatic consideration. Farm workers want undocumented migrants. They want workers. They want cheap labor. This is, but the current situation is a conflict of different dimensions of domination. This may be an opportunity to study some questions. So here's my question: is does that give you some hints about something? So use that natural experiment, which is very bad in many dimensions, but maybe something good in terms of research can come out of that. Now, let me come back to Greta's talk, and I felt lots of similarities with the history of economics, the economics disciplines in the last maybe 30 years, in terms of the centrality of the theme of inequality. Inequality was not central to the economic analysis. It was present in work by some colleagues, an important one, but it was not central. The central question, and maybe Owen will not agree with me or other economists, but the central focus was on how much to produce or how to be more efficient, not about how what was produced was distributed. Okay, so it was not central. There was some exceptions with concerns, especially about poverty. So that's why that's when inequalities came in the picture, and that came in part mostly from development economics, who paid more attention to poverty, and then it came back maybe at the core of economic analysis, following pioneering works by Tony Atkinson, Amartya Sen, and of course Piketty. So many works have been done on the quantifications of inequality, but it's not only poverty that was the concern, but the whole distribution of income, mostly income. So one dimension, mostly income, but it also, and Piketty's works also moved somehow and succeeded, had an amazing success in the profession in paying more attention to inequality, but somehow also had another effect, which is we focus on the top 1%, okay, or even on the 0.1% or on the 0.001%. The only reason why we focus on the the smaller parts of the distribution is because we have better data, and which is a good thing. But now there is a risk in there, and to me it seems that focusing on privilege or trying to define what we can, how privilege can be defined, to me it seems like a little bit like the same process of paying more attention to the privileged, the wealthy, the rich, the dominant. Now, one of the risks associated with this process is that now we focus on some policies, like taxing the rich, which are probably good policies, especially in contexts where the rich have gone much, much richer for not obvious reasons. But if we think of reducing inequalities, taxing the rich does not reduce inequalities by much, because the rich are not numerous. What reduces inequalities, in many cases, is both social transfers to the poor. Give money to the poor. Of course, if you want to give money to the poor, you have to take it from somewhere and from someone. But there is a risk by focusing on one part of the distribution that we somehow not forget, but don't pay as much attention as to policies that really reduce poverty and reduce inequality by reducing poverty. So now maybe a more specific question. Now, everything I mentioned about Piketty's work or economists' work is unidimensional, is just one dimension, income. Sometimes income and wealth, but the data on wealth at the individual level is way more unstable and unreliable than on income. So, but it's as soon as we adopt a multidimensional perspective, so an intersectional approach, which is not only looking at the marginal distribution, but looking at the joint distribution, which is, two marginal distribution does not make one two-dimensional distribution. And that's it. So we're really concerned about the correlation or but on which dimensions? So you mentioned lots of possible dimensions that could interact and that would be relevant to examine this or that phenomena. But we cannot cross 7 dimensions empirically. This is going to be very difficult. Or we don't have the data set in quantitative analysis. We don't have a rich enough data set. So we have to choose which dimensions. Now, the dimensions that we choose to interact, if we adopt this intersectional approach that focuses on the unprivileged or the disadvantaged, are not necessarily the same dimensions that we should interact if we are concerned or if our interest is on the privileged, on the most favored individual. So could you say something about that? How to choose, how to identify, or does it change, or should we just look at the routine 3 dimensions, race, gender, and class, or is it something different? But I'm sure that by looking at the top of the distributions, or the top of there is no such thing as the top of the joint distribution, but nevertheless, let's say the northeast corner, I'm sure that it's also a good way to learn about the whole distribution. Okay, so that's it's kind of confused, so I'm sure that I've convinced you about one of the conditions. So, no, je reste. Okay.